Shkoch, kol kavod to Tisser for leading us through our davening so beautifully. Shana tova lekulam. Oh, come on. We've been waiting a whole year for this. Shana tova. There we go. So I'd like to share with you some thoughts, and then we'll conclude our davening. Here's the sermon that I wrote for Rosh Hashanah. I wrote it a few weeks ago, and I revised it at the end of last week. It's not a bad sermon, but it's not the sermon that I'm giving today. This is the one that I'm giving today. I wrote it just 2 days ago. And you'll be happy that I'm switching, because today's sermon is half the length of the original sermon. It's only 20 minutes instead of 40 minutes. But don't fear, you'll have an opportunity to hear this one on Yom Kippur. So I'm usually pretty planful to avoid switching topics at the last minute, but given the year that we've had, I thought that changing gears was the right thing to do, and because it's the topic of my sermon. Sometimes the best laid plans of mice and men go awry, or in Yiddish, man tracht und Gott lacht. People plan and God laughs. Man tracht und Gott lacht. The meaning of this well-known phrase is pretty obvious. Despite our best efforts and intentions, things don't go always the way we want. It suggests that we are not in complete control, and perhaps our strivings are entirely in vain. Sometimes it's said as a lighthearted jest, something like, "Come on, get over it." But I share it with you today because upon further consideration, I believe that it has an important lesson to offer us in the new year ahead. Now, one thing needs to be said and clear from the outset. The reason why we planned and revised our plans over and over again is because the world is a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad mess right now. There's nothing at all funny about COVID that has killed millions and millions of people. There's nothing funny about hurricanes that have killed dozens and displaced tens of thousands. There's nothing funny about fires and droughts and wars, the man-made and the natural disasters that have become our lot. God does not laugh about these. If anything, God cries with us. Let me say as well that I don't want to imply that I believe that God micromanages the world. Like, Dafka, God wanted to mess up my plans to go to the Galapagos Island and so fashion some kind of crazy storm. Or that God wanted to mess with our Yontif menus and so God bought up all the brisket in the city, making it hard to buy one. We'll leave that theological question of whether God pulls the strings for another sermon. Man tracht und Gott lacht. People plan, but God laughs. I hardly need to explain why this saying comes to mind. We're living in a time of uncertainty and unpredictability. You planned a wedding, only to have it postponed. You planned travel and work events, only to have them canceled. You planned to have your kids in school, in camp, only to see those plans change in an instant. And you didn't just plan. You planned and you planned again and again. I'm not looking for any sympathy, because I know it's no different for you, but I can't tell you how many different iterations of High Holiday services we planned. Of course, the challenge of best laid plans, it's not unique to this year. We all have plans that change. We all have dreams that go unrealized. Life doesn't always turn out as I expected or hoped. In my marriage, with my children, at work. It's not that I expected perfection. I knew there would be setbacks and challenges. But this, I didn't expect this. We grew apart. There was an accident, an illness, a death. And I'm left with a broken heart, a broken relationship, a feeling of failure. Of course, it's not all gloom and doom. Sometimes the unexpected can be wonderful. An opportunity I couldn't pass up. A chance I hadn't anticipated, a fortune that fell in my lap. Earlier this year, a guy from Michigan accidentally bought 2 lottery tickets. He was intending only to buy one, used the same number. Later, when he logged on to check the results, turns out that he had won not one, but 2 $1 million prizes. Guessed he had the last laugh. Man tracht und Gott lacht. Sometimes our plans don't work out, and it's just an inconvenience. It's a hassle, but no biggie. But when it's important, and you plan, and the plans change, it's incredibly frustrating. It's maddening. You just want to throw up your hands to the heaven and say, what's the point of it all? What's the point of my planning if it's just going to get tossed out? What's the point if God is going to laugh at our vain efforts? So I want to offer a different take on God's laughter. I want to suggest that God is not laughing at us, but laughing with us. Not laughing to mock the folly of human initiative, but laughing in wonder and delight at our perseverance. There's a famous passage in the Talmud in which the rabbis debate a particular question of Jewish law. At one point in the debate, Rabbi Yoshua stands up and quotes words from last week's Parsha, Lo b'shamayim hi. The Torah isn't in heaven, it's in our hands, he says. I don't care what God said on Mount Sinai. We follow the rule of the majority of rabbis. What did God do in that very instant? Elijah, the prophet, reported that God laughed in joy, saying, my children have defeated me. My children have defeated me. I love this story about rabbis with chutzpah challenging God over God's authority to determine Jewish law. It kind of reminds me of what happened when I taught one of my boys to play checkers. At first, I played easy with him to help him kind of build up his confidence. But when I had that opportunity for the triple jump, well, I couldn't pass that up. So I won, and for years, I won until slowly he improved. And eventually, he got pretty good, until one day I was no longer taking it easy, and he legitimately beat me. And in that moment, in addition to feeling embarrassed and a bit annoyed, I was so proud. My son had defeated me. That's awesome, I thought, and I laughed. From this perspective, Man tracht und Gott lacht suggests that God delights in human ingenuity. God wants us to grow, to mature, to become independent thinkers. God takes pride and finds joy in our efforts to make a difference in this world. And we have. For all of our dysfunction, for all of the climate-changing carbon that we have emitted, for all of the endless wars that we have fought, for all of the dangerous conspiracy theories that we have promulgated, we are a pretty incredible species. We created a vaccine in record time that's saving millions and millions of lives. We flew helicopters on Mars and watched a young Hmong girl from St. Paul soar to gold. We created Facebook so that we could post cat pictures, and TikTok. Wait, why did we create TikTok? In short, we humans can do incredible things that a generation ago would have sounded laughable. And if I may be so bold, God needs our creativity and our ingenuity and our initiative, because it turns out that God doesn't seem to get it all right all the time either. As Rabbi Sherry Hirsch writes in her book, We Plan, God Laughs, What to Do When Life Hits You Over the Head. God too may feel that some of his plans may not have gone as he wanted. It all started with Adam and Eve. They only had one rule, and they broke it. Cain and Abel, the Israelites begged to return to Egypt. Moshe broke the first set of tablets. God plans, she says, and we laugh. That is Dafka, why God chose the Jewish people to be partners in the ongoing work of creation. And I don't have to tell you, there's a lot of work to do. Man tracht und Gott lacht. Yes, sometimes we yell in frustration, we rail against God at the injustice of it all. All that is fair game, and I'd add very Jewish. But do you know what the best Jewish response is? Get working, try again. never give up, dip your apples in honey and hope l'shana haba for a better year, and laugh, appreciating the blessings in life. Looking back over this past year, there was plenty of reason to cry. But there were also reasons to celebrate and to laugh. Your grandson rode a bike for the first time. Your granddaughter was called to the Torah as a bat mitzvah. You got a promotion at work, an A on a paper in school. You postponed a wedding once, twice, and then you said, what the heck? It'll be small, our friends will be on Zoom, but love can't wait. And you stood under the chuppah. Sometimes laughter comes when you least expect it. I was visiting my folks in Portland. Earlier this summer, I was walking around some shops downtown. I stopped to look at one window at a display of refrigerator magnets, and I just started cracking up. This is the one that Esther got me. How do people who are not married ever find out that they're loading the dishwasher incorrectly? When you laugh, you breathe in deeply. For a moment, nothing else seems to matter, and you feel renewed. And that makes sense, because we laugh before we talk. Laughing can stimulate our heart and our lungs and our muscles. It releases endorphins that make us feel happy and relieve pain and stress. It can even boost our immune system. No, of course, it's not a remedy for disease, but laughter is contagious. And Rosh Hashanah is a great chance to catch it. A perfect time for a laughter super spreader. Okay, some dark humor. We read this morning of the birth of Isaac. Remember the background. Sarah was 90 years old, longing for a child, Abraham 100 years old, when 3 angels came knocking on their tent and said to her, "You're pregnant." She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She laughed, saying, "God has brought me laughter. Anyone who hears me will laugh with me." And Abraham named the boy Yitzchak because he wanted Sarah to remember this moment of laughter. He wanted her to remember the miracle of Isaac's birth, to recall the delight when emptiness and sorrow was transformed into pride and joy. Abraham named the very first Jewish child Laughter as a harbinger for his future and for ours. Now, admittedly, Isaac had a difficult life. He knew many tsuras. The same is true for the Jewish people historically and in our own day, when once again we've seen a rise in anti-Semitism. But as a Jewish people, we've known not only oys, but joys. And we've shared those joys with others. It's no coincidence that so many comedians are Jewish, because we need laughter to survive. And that's a lesson that we desperately need this year. Looking back on 5781, it could be very easy to cry. But I believe in the words of Ecclesiastes that we'll read on Sukkot, there is a time to cry and a time to laugh. And sometimes they are one and the same. It's okay to laugh at a funeral. And it's okay maybe to sing Springtime for Hitler. It's okay to find joy and to celebrate in the midst of a pandemic as long as we each step up to partner with each other and with God to fix this place we call home. And that's my sermon for Yom Kippur. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone should run to enroll in a laughter yoga class or listen to old Mel Brooks routines. Nor am I saying that we should just shrug our shoulders and laugh at our mistakes, at the hurt we inflicted on others. No, this is a time of tshuva, of repentance and forgiveness. It's a time to cut people some slack for what they did or didn't do that ruined your plans, and ask forgiveness for what you did to ruin their plans. My point is that laughing helps us maintain perspective in the face of panic, even as we work to address the tremendous challenges that lay before us. We have to find joy. We We have to laugh, we have to express gratitude, to revel in miracles, and to hope. Always to hope. The rabbis teach that today, Rosh Hashanah, the day that Yitzchak was born, laughter was brought to the world. And in that moment, all who were sick were healed. Women who were barren became pregnant, and the world was filled with joy. Boy, do we need that kind of laughter. So this year, I am determined to laugh with God, to savor the sweetness amidst the bitter, to delight and not just despair. As we look to 5782, we should brace ourselves. We should plan. We should be prepared to revise our plans. And amidst the stress and despite the worry and the frustration, we should find the time and the will to laugh, to celebrate, to be grateful, and to share all of that and more with others, saying, "Tzchok asa li Elohim, kol hashameh yitzchak li." God has given me laughter. Come laugh with me. There is no guarantee that life will turn out as we plan. But as human beings, we have the capacity, and as Jews, we have the calling to make a difference in this world. With all this talk of laughter, you'd think I'd have a good joke. So here goes. A rabbi walks into a shul. Ouch! Shana tova.